let's unpack this. Today, we're taking a deep, structured dive into the very foundation of English communication.
We really are.
We are going right to the bedrock, the structural steel of the language, the simple present tense.
That's absolutely right. The sources we have for this deep dive are really intensely focused. They're drawn from an English learning resource that's explicitly designed to make mastering this core skill fun and easy.
Fun and easy, right.
It's basically a grammar boot camp disguised as a conversation, and our mission is to extract the maximum knowledge for you.
And our goal is specific. We're not just, summarizing the rules.
No.
We're extracting the essential mechanics, all those tricky little spelling changes, the
Yeah.
precise usage contexts like habits and general truth. And crucially, we're mapping the wealth of high-utility vocabulary tied to describing your entire daily life.
Mm-hmm.
We want to give you a true shortcut to fluency and confidence in using this tense, because if you can't use the simple present, you can't really describe your own world.
And what's fascinating here is how often learners, even learners who reach, intermediate levels, still struggle with this tense. It seems so basic.
It does.
But it is the highest hurdle because they skip the foundational why and how. Mastering this, the third person's, the auxiliary dodos, that's the key to clarity. It's the difference between sounding unsure and sounding entirely confident when talking about what you do, what you believe, and, what happens regularly.
So we're starting right at the core. Let's build this structure from the ground up. So if you ask any language expert, they'll tell you the simple present is fundamental. Why is it the first tense we should really master?
Because of its sheer utility, its scope. Unlike tenses that describe actions happening, right now, or actions that finished in the past, the simple present handles the stable, the consistent, the recurring elements of life.
It's the tense of definition.
Exactly. It covers 4 major areas, all of which are constant in everyday conversation.
Give us those 4 categories.
Okay. First, habits and routines. Anything you do repeatedly, like I drink coffee every morning. That's a classic example.
Right.
Second, general truths. These are facts that are just universally accepted, like the sun rises in the east.
I'd argue that one.
Third, regular actions. So actions that happen consistently, even if they aren't quite a daily habit. For instance, the source mentions a character, Sarah, who says, I teach English 5 days a week.
Ah, so that's her professional routine.
Exactly. And fourth, scheduled events, particularly for things like timetables or programs. The train leaves at 7 a.m. It just captures the consistency of the world around us.
Okay, so consistency is the key word here. Now let's build the sentences. The formation rules are broken down into 2 main parts, and it's all defined by the subject.
Right, and rule number 1 is mercifully simple. It applies to the subjects I, you, we, and they.
Okay.
For these subjects, the formation is just the base form of the verb. You take the verb in its simplest form and you use it.
So if we take the base verb work, we get I work, you work, we work, and they work.
Simple as that.
And if we use study, it's I study, you study, we study, they study. No changes needed, just the root verb. This is like simple foundational vocabulary used immediately.
Yes. The source material provides some really straightforward examples. I read, you listen, we travel, and they communicate. No mental math required at all.
Okay, but here's where the challenge begins. Rule number 2. The critical S, or ES. This is the part that, if you miss it, it immediately signals that the speaker is still learning. We're talking about the third person singular, he, she, and it.
This is the mandatory marker in the simple present tense. For he, she, and it, we must add an S or is to the end of the verb. It's a tiny little linguistic habit, but it absolutely has to be ingrained.
So if I work, then he works. If they study, then she studies.
Right.
If the clouds drift, then it rains. That et or as is not optional, it's mandatory to signal that specific subject.
It is the grammatical signature of the third person singular in this tense. And the sources provide a really necessary deep dive into the spelling rules because knowing when to use just S versus es is crucial for both writing and, honestly, for fluent pronunciation.
Let's break down that nuance because it's where the detail really matters. Most verbs just add S.
The majority, yeah.
So walk becomes walks, eat becomes eats, drink becomes drinks. Simple addition.
But then we hit the, let's call them the phonetic trouble spots, which is the ES rule.
Why do they need that extra vowel sound?
It's entirely for ease of speech. I mean, if a verb ends in a sound that already sounds like an S or a Z or is just hard to connect directly to an S, we add S to create a clear extra syllable. It just makes it flow.
Okay, so let's systematically unpack the 6 specific endings that trigger that ES rule as detailed in the source.
Okay, first up, verbs ending in S or SS. If we just added an S to pass, it would be, well, you can't really say it.
Pass, no.
Exactly. So we add ES, pass becomes passes. Same for miss becoming misses. You need that vowel sound.
Second, verbs ending in U or ES. Verbs like wash and teach.
You just can't easily add an S sound directly after an IA or G sound. It sort of clashes. So wash becomes washes and teach becomes teaches.
Just catches.
Catches, exactly. Just smooths the word right out.
Okay, third, verbs ending in X or O.
For X, right? If Michael fixes something, we say he fixes the car. The X sound already has a K sound in it, so the E is necessary. And critically, the verb go becomes goes and do becomes does.
And those two are everywhere.
Constantly. So mastering them is absolutely vital.
So we have S, 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 GH, X, and O. That's a set. 6 endings, all demanding the addition of ES. If you can just memorize those 6 endings, you've solved, what, 90% of the spelling problems.
That's a perfect summary of it. Now we hit the final subtle distinction, the Y rule split. This one's often confusing because sometimes the Y changes and sometimes it doesn't.
Right, so this means we have to look at the letter that comes immediately before the Y.
Precisely. If that letter is a consonant, so any letter except A, E, I, O, U, then the Y changes to an I before we add E's. We call this the IE's ending.
The sources cite excellent examples here. Study ends in D, a consonant, so she studies. Try ends in RY, another consonant, so he tries. Even cry ends in RA, so it cries. That consonant connection is the trigger for the change.
It is the marker, however. And this is the important part. If the letter before the Y is a vowel, the Y is protected.
Yeah.
We simply add is, and there is no Y to I change.
I find this rule fascinating. Why do we keep the Y if there is a vowel?
Well, it's a matter of maintaining the vowel sound and avoiding having, too many adjacent vowels, which can change the pronunciation completely.
Ah, I see.
Look at play. It ends in S. If you change it to plays, the pronunciation would become confusing. Instead, we just add S. He plays.
So the same for enjoy, it becomes she enjoys.
Exactly. And verbs like pay, say, and buy all follow that vowel plus lie rule. This tiny spelling difference makes a huge impact on whether the sentence construction is accurate.
So mastering this whole third-person singular formation, including all the specific spelling nuances, the 6 ES endings, and that Y rule split, it's just non-negotiable for proficiency in the simple present.
It really is the bedrock.
Okay, we've established how to make a simple positive statement describing routine. Now we need to ask questions and, make negative statements about those routines.
Right.
And this requires us to bring in a new set of tools entirely.
Indeed. This is where we introduce the concept of the auxiliary verb.
The helper verb.
The helper verb, exactly. Unlike some other languages, and even unlike the simple past tense, which uses did, the simple present relies entirely on the auxiliary verb do, or does, to create negatives in questions. It's the engine that carries all the grammatical weight.
Let's focus first on constructing negative sentences. We combine that auxiliary verb with not. And once again, the choice depends entirely on the subject.
Right. For I, you, we, and they, we use do not, or much more commonly in spoken English, the contraction don't.
And the main verb?
The base verb remains unchanged.
Okay, so examples from the source confirm this. I don't like spicy food. We don't smoke. They don't live here anymore. Simple negation of a current reality or routine.
And for he, she, and it, we use does not, or the contraction doesn't. And that crucial as that we just spent so much time on, it now attaches itself to the auxiliary verb.
So it moves.
It migrates.
So if Sarah teaches 5 days a week, then she doesn't work on Sundays.
Right.
If Michael eats meat, then he doesn't eat fish. The es has migrated from the main verb to the auxiliary verb.
That migration is the critical piece of information here, and it leads us directly to what the sources call the crucial base form rule. This is genuinely the aha moment for a lot of people, but is also the most common point of failure for learners.
Okay, explain this rule in detail. If the auxiliary verb carries the weight, what happens to the main verb?
This is the law of grammatical redundancy. You only need to mark the third person singular once per clause. So once the auxiliary don't or doesn't is used, the main verb must revert to its base form.
It has to go back.
It has to. You strip off any is or es that the positive statement required.
I need to be absolutely clear on this. Let's take a paired example. If I say, she watches TV every night, I use the es because of the chif rule.
Correct.
But if I negate it, I must say, she doesn't watch TV. I absolutely must not say she doesn't watch his TV.
You've hit the nail on the head. Saying she doesn't watches is redundant and grammatically incorrect, even though it feels sort of natural to some learners who are so focused on remembering that third person's.
Because the signal's already there.
The grammatical signal is already contained in the do.
So if Michael studies German, then he studies German. The negative is he doesn't study German.
Study reverts, yes. Or take a simpler verb. It rains a lot here. Negative. It doesn't rain a lot here. The rain drops the as because it doesn't already has it. If you master this single concept, the auxiliary carries the weight, the main verb is base form, you immediately elevate your fluency.
Okay, let's turn this around and talk about forming questions. We still rely on do or does, but we change their placement.
When forming a simple yes-no question, the auxiliary verb moves. It goes to the very beginning of the sentence, right before the subject.
This is called inversion.
Inversion, exactly.
So for I, you, we, and they, we start with do. Do you speak English? Do they live here? Simple.
And for he, she, and it, we start with does.
Oh.
So does he play guitar? Does she work here?
And I assume, based on what we just drilled for the negative, that the crucial base form rule applies equally to questions.
Absolutely. The rule is consistent. When does is used at the beginning of the question, the main verb remains in its base form.
You ask, does he play? Not, does he plays?
Never.
I think it's worth taking a moment to reflect on why English does this. Why does the simple present need an auxiliary verb for questions and negatives when, for instance, the verb to be doesn't? We don't say, do I am happy.
That is a brilliant question that really highlights the structure of English. The verb to be is the exception. It's what we call a strong verb. It can carry its own negation and inversion. I am happy becomes am I happy, and I am not happy.
Right.
But most verbs in English are weak. And by around the 17th century, they came to rely on the auxiliary do to manage complexity and create standardized question and negative forms. Without do or does, you would be forced to awkwardly say things like, works she here, or she works not here, which are forms no longer used in standard modern English. The auxiliary is the stabilizing force.
That makes the structure of the simple present tense crystal clear. Whether you are negating or asking a question about a third-person singular subject, the auxiliary verb doesn't or does is your signal, and the main verb gets a free pass to revert back to its simplest form.
That's it in a nutshell.
The grammar is the machine. Now we're firing it up for the real world.
Let's do it.
We're shifting entirely from mechanics to the concrete context of daily activities, drawing heavily on the two detailed routines provided in the source material, Sarah's and Michael's.
This transition demonstrates the utility, The whole purpose of this grammar is to communicate habits. And by comparing Sarah and Michael, we get not only crucial vocabulary, but also the context for applying the grammar structure we just built.
Let's start with the morning routine, which, it sets the entire tone for the day. Sarah is structured and early.
She wakes up at 6:30. She's a dedicated early bird. Her alarm rings, she immediately gets out of bed, and critically, she makes her bed right away because she likes to keep her bedroom tidy.
All simple present actions.
All of them. She brushes her teeth, washes her face, and takes a warm shower. It's a consistent chain of habits.
Michael is the counterpoint. He is definitely not a morning person.
Not at all.
He wakes up at 7 a.m. needing that extra 30 minutes. But notice how the grammar holds true? Michael wakes up at 7:00.
Yes, and we see an immediate application of detail. Michael brushes his teeth for a full 2 minutes, a dentist-recommended habit. He prefers hot showers, presumably to jolt him awake, which contrasts with Sarah, who opts for warm showers.
So we can already ask a question here. Does Sarah take hot showers? No, she doesn't take hot showers. She takes warm showers. See how the negative works perfectly?
Absolutely. The grammar is constantly reinforced. After their hygiene routines, we see differences in clothing and preparation.
Right.
Sarah's routine changes based on the day. She wears professional clothes, a blouse, pants, or a dress when she teaches. But on weekends, she wears casual clothes, jeans, and a t-shirt. She dresses differently depending on the activity.
Michael, however, is very consistent during the week. He wears a shirt and trousers for a professional look. He dresses professionally 5 days a week.
Then we move to the essential fuel, breakfast rituals. Both Sarah and Michael agree that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
They both prioritize this habit.
They do.
Sarah's breakfast is health-conscious and efficient. She eats cereal with milk and a banana, and she drinks 1 cup of essential coffee to start the day.
Sarah also provides us with a great example of a meticulous routine. She brushes her teeth again after eating breakfast. This secondary action is a detail that really defines her routine.
Michael, meanwhile, has a significantly more caffeinated approach.
He really does.
He drums 2 cups of coffee. His food is toast with butter and jam. And importantly, he sometimes eats eggs, scrambled or fried, which he notes only takes him 5 minutes to cook.
That sometimes is a perfect lead-in to what we'll talk about later, but for now it just illustrates how the simple present tense handles variation within a routine. Sarah always has cereal. Michael sometimes has eggs.
Once they're fueled up, we look at the commute and work life.
Michael leaves at 8 a.m. He walks to the bus stop, and his bus ride takes about 20 minutes. He relies on public transportation.
Sarah drives. She has a car and avoids public transportation entirely. Her drive takes a slightly shorter 15 minutes. So we see a clear contrast. Michael doesn't drive to work. Sarah doesn't take the bus.
Exactly. Once they arrive, Sarah's start of day involves greeting colleagues in the teacher's lounge, chatting for a bit, and then she prepares her classroom for the day.
Michael likely heads straight to his office.
We can assume so. The teaching schedule is consistent for both. Their first class starts around 9:00 a.m., and they both teach 4 or 5 classes a day, with each class lasting about an hour.
This brings them to the lunch break at 12:30.
Right. Sarah maintains her healthy routine, typically bringing a prepared lunch from home sandwich, fruit, yogurt. She prepares this lunch the night before.
Michael is more flexible in his midday routine. He sometimes brings lunch, but he also buys lunch at a nearby restaurant. Again, the simple present handles both regular and occasional habits perfectly.
And in the afternoon tasks, we see the consistency of professional life. Their last class finishes at 4:00 p.m. Then follows the administrative routine. They both grade homework, prepare next day's lessons, and answer emails. The sources emphasize that communication is crucial in their job, so answering emails is a mandatory daily routine.
So we've walked through 8 hours of their professional routine, and every single repeated action is captured perfectly using the simple present tense. We see she teaches, he walks, she doesn't take the bus, and does he eat eggs? All woven into the narrative.
It's the language of their lives.
As the workday ends, a whole new set of routines begins.
Right, the evening shift.
Sarah leaves work around 5:00 p.m. Before they can relax, though, we have to look at errands and household management.
Sarah is very structured with her grocery shopping. She only shops twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, or she stops by the store only if something is urgently needed. She really prioritizes efficiency.
Michael is the opposite. He shops for all his groceries on the weekends, usually Saturday mornings.
So we can easily compare them using the negative. Sarah doesn't shop on Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
Michael doesn't shop on Fridays.
Exactly. Once they're home, the focus shifts to relaxation techniques. Sarah provides a really detailed list of ways she winds down.
She changes into comfortable clothes immediately. She reads books. She loves mystery novels. She also watches TV shows, listens to music, or calls friends and family to stay connected.
Michael's relaxation is more focused on media and information consumption. He watches the news to stay informed. Then he watches his favorite series or a movie. He also reads a book or listens to podcasts before bed.
Now for the exercise commitment, which is highly structured for both of them, and it perfectly illustrates scheduled habitual actions.
Michael is rigorous at the gym, committing 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. On those days, he lifts weights and runs on the treadmill.
Sarah, on the other hand, is focused on flexibility and internal calm. She practices yoga 4 times a week. Additionally, she goes for walks in the park on weekends. The source explicitly mentions that yoga is good for flexibility and stress relief, which adds context to why she maintains that habit.
So if we contrast them with a question, does Michael do yoga?
No, he doesn't do yoga, he lifts weights.
Does Sarah run on the treadmill?
No, she doesn't run on the treadmill. Again, the grammar is perfectly applied to describe their different routines.
Then we get to dinner and chores. Dinner time is usually 7:00 p.m. for Sarah. She enjoys cooking, she finds it relaxing, and she cooks her own meals, aiming for healthy, balanced choices like pasta with vegetables, chicken and rice, or fish salad.
Michael also cooks, but he admits his cooking routine is simpler. He cooks dishes like stir-fry, soup, or grilled meat.
And we get a quick glimpse into the dessert debate through Michael.
I like that, the dessert debate.
He has a sweet tooth and enjoys ice cream or cookies occasionally, but he practices moderation. Sarah doesn't mention dessert at all, which kind of reinforces her healthy meal focus.
The immediate household chores are a non-negotiable routine for both of them. They both wash the dishes and clean the kitchen immediately after dinner. That's a daily maintenance habit.
But the bigger chores,
Those are scheduled differently. Laundry, vacuuming, and dusting are usually done on weekends. This shows a distinction between daily, immediate chores and the scheduled weekly ones.
Finally, the bedtime routine and security. Sarah goes to bed at 10:30 p.m. because she needs 8 hours of sleep to feel rested and energized for the next teaching day.
Michael, our night owl, goes to bed later at 11:00 p.m. But he also emphasizes the health aspect. He maintains a regular sleep schedule because consistency is important for his health.
And their final steps are identical for safety and preparation. They both set the alarm, brush teeth, wash the face, turn off lights, and ensure all doors are locked. Safety is the last habit of the day.
What stands out in this whole practical application is how the simplest grammar structure, the simple present tense, is capable of holding all the minute details of a complex modern life. It gives you the vocabulary for your own 24 hours.
Absolutely. We've used Sarah and Michael to demonstrate personal routines, but now we need to broaden the lens to the common, broader activities that define modern life.
Right.
This gives us expanded vocabulary and ensures that you, the listener, can apply the simple present tense to any consistent activity.
This section is really about maximizing vocabulary exposure within that simple present framework, moving from the personal routine to societal routines.
Okay, starting with hobbies and interest. This is where people spend their essential free time.
The source material mentions creative pursuits like musical instruments. So people practice the piano, guitar, or violin. This verb, practice, is a perfect simple present verb because it's a repeated action.
And then there are team and individual sports. People play soccer, basketball, or tennis, or they go swimming regularly. He plays soccer every Tuesday. Again, direct application.
We also look at caring for others, which introduces the concept of recurring responsibility. Taking care of pets is a great example. People feed their dogs, walk them, and play with them. The source notes this is a big responsibility, making it a powerful daily routine.
And within the family structure, there's the routine of family time. People eat meals together, talk about the day, and just enjoy company. These are regular, precious, shared moments that define a relationship.
And friendships require maintenance too, right? People meet for coffee, go to the movies, or chat on the phone. These are essential social connections, and the simple present tense captures their regularity perfectly.
Okay, moving on to work and education. The vocabulary here is huge, covering all professional and scholastic routines.
For students, the routine involves specific verbs of learning. They attend classes, they do homework, and they prepare for exams.
And for working people, the routine is heavy on communication and administration. They attend meetings, they write reports, they make phone calls, and they complete various tasks. These verbs describe the core of professional life.
And we should definitely mention the wonderful habit of volunteering. People help at hospitals, schools, or charity organizations. The source rightly calls this a great way to give back to the community, and it's something done on a regular, habitual basis, fitting the simple present perfectly.
And finally, we address modern life management. These are tasks that have become ingrained in our daily routines because of technology and, well, just the complexity of life.
Technology use is paramount. People check their smartphones, send texts, browse social media, and use computers for work or entertainment. Technology is just everywhere, making these verbs daily, often hourly, actions.
Healthcare involves routine maintenance. People visit doctors for checkups, take vitamins or medications, and pay attention to diet and exercise. All of these are regular, proactive steps toward maintaining health.
And finally, finance management, a complex, recurring responsibility. People pay bills, check bank accounts, save money, and plan budgets. This list demonstrates just how broad the application of the simple present tense is. It truly captures every recurring facet of our world.
If you need a verb to describe an action that happens regularly, chances are you need the simple present tense.
That's the one.
Okay, so we've established the actions and the grammar structure. Now we need to inject precision.
Yes.
If the simple present tense describes that something happens, frequency adverbs tell us how often something happens, adding essential shading to our descriptions.
Exactly. They allow us to move beyond binary statements, yes or no, I do or I don't, to nuanced descriptions. I usually do this, but I rarely do that.
And the source material provides a really unique and extremely helpful aid for the listener, the adverb scale breakdown, linking each adverb to a specific percentage equivalent.
Right, which makes the hierarchy of frequency very, very clear.
So at the absolute top, we have always, 100%. This is an action that is non-negotiable and happens every single time.
The example is, I always brush my teeth before bed. If you skip it, it's an anomaly.
Moving slightly down, we have usually 80–90%. This implies the routine holds up the vast majority of the time, but, exceptions exist.
Right. I usually walk to work. implying that sometimes they drive, but generally the habit is walking.
Following that is often, 60–70%. This is a frequent habit, but one where the speaker acknowledges it is easily skipped or replaced.
She often drinks tea in the afternoon. A frequent habit, but definitely not every single day.
And sometimes sits right in the middle, covering about 40–50% of the time. It could easily go either way.
We sometimes go to the cinema on weekends. It's an option, not a guaranteed occurrence.
At the low end, we pair rarely and seldom, 10–20%. This indicates a notable exception when the action occurs.
The example is, he rarely eats fast food. So if he does eat it, it's memorable precisely because it is so rare.
And finally, never, 0%. A powerful statement of non-action. They never smoke cigarettes. This scale provides an excellent tool for placing these words accurately and understanding their meaning precisely.
But understanding the meaning is only half the battle. We have to master the placement rules, the syntax, because placing these adverbs correctly is a crucial marker of fluency.
What's the standard placement rule for the adverbs we just discussed? Always, usually, often, sometimes, rarely, never.
The standard rule is that frequency adverbs are usually placed before the main verb. So if we go back to our examples, I always study English, he usually works late, they often travel in the summer. The adverb modifies the verb directly and comes right before it.
But there is, of course, a critical exception that trips everyone up.
The to be exception.
You have to be exception.
Yes, if the verb in the sentence is the verb to be, so am is are, the adverb must come after it. So you would say, I am always happy, not I always am happy.
Okay.
You say, he's usually on time, not he usually is on time. The adverb follows the form of to be.
That is a subtle but really important distinction that demands repetition and conscious practice. The placement changes based on that one specific verb.
And we also need to look at frequency expressions. These are phrases that express frequency using multiple words rather than the single adverbs, and their placement rule is different again.
Right, these are phrases like every day, twice a week, once a month, or 3 times a year. They're specific measurements of time.
And their placement is typically at the end of the sentence. If we use Sarah's routine, I practice yoga 4 times a week. Or Michael, he checks his email twice a day.
So we have a clear 3-part system for placement. Single adverbs go before the main verb. Single adverbs go after the verb to be.
Right.
And multi-word expressions typically anchor the end of the sentence.
Correct. And using both the adverbs and the expressions allows for sophisticated and nuanced descriptions of complex routines, making the simple present tense extremely versatile in telling the story of your life.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We've moved from the technical mechanics of the SAS's rules and the base form rule, through the detailed daily routines of Michael and Sarah, and finally to the precision added by frequency adverbs.
Right. So now let's briefly synthesize the 5 most crucial takeaways for retention. If you remember nothing else from this deep dive, internalize these 5 keys.
Number 1, usage for habits. The simple present tense is for habits, routines, and general unmoving truths.
Number 2, the S rule. Always, without exception, add s or es to the verb for he, she, and it. And remember those 6 C's endings? And the consonant vowel, ya split.
Number 3, negation and the base verb. Use don't or doesn't, and remember the rule that the main verb must drop the es and return to its simplest form.
Got it. Number 4, questions and the base verb. Use do or does at the beginning of the sentence, and again the main verb stays in its base form.
And number 5, precision with frequency. Use frequency adverbs like usually and often before the main verb, or use time expressions like every day at the end of the sentence.
To solidify this knowledge, the source material included a set of practical self-assessment questions, encouraging you, the listener, to use the simple present tense immediately to describe your own reality.
We should go through them.
Yeah, answer these to yourself out loud, applying the grammar we just discussed.
First, what time do you wake up every morning? Use the verb wake up.
Second, what do you eat for breakfast? Think about what you always eat versus what you sometimes eat.
Third, how do you go to work or school? Do you drive, walk, or take the bus?
Fourth, what do you do in your free time? Use those hobby verbs. Practice, play, read.
Fifth, how often do you exercise? Use a frequency adverb. Always. 3 times a week. Rarely.
Sixth, what do you usually do on weekends? Do you do chores, relax, or see friends?
And finally, what time do you go to bed? Frame the end of your day.
Practicing those questions out loud forces the grammar structure, especially the SES's rule, if you were talking about someone else's routine, from an abstract concept into immediate, usable speech.
The source also gave us some great tips for consistency. This isn't just a one-time learning session. Language acquisition requires patience and ongoing effort.
That's vital. Be patient with yourself, practice consistently, and try to use English daily reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Consistency is the foundation of habit, and the simple present is the language of habit.
And that superb final tip, writing in a journal about your daily routine, that forces you to use the simple present tense repeatedly, solidifying the Hess's rule and the auxiliary usage in a practical, personalized context.
We have successfully mapped not only the detailed grammar structure, but also the extensive vocabulary needed to describe a complete life routine, drawing on the specific habits of Sarah and Michael, from the 6:30 a.m. coffee to the 11:000 p.m. security checks. It truly covers everything you do consistently.
It all comes down to habit and consistency, both in life and in language structure.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought. We learned that people manage their finances as part of their recurring daily routine. They pay bills, they check bank accounts, and they save money.
Right.
So if the simple present tense is the language of routine, what daily habits or routines related to money management do people rarely or never do, using those frequency adverbs, even though they know they should? Do they rarely track their expenses? Do they never review their budget?
A great question to take away, connecting the grammar we learned today directly to the responsibilities we manage. Use the framework we discussed, reflect on your own routine, and ask yourself, what do I always do and what do I never do? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Keep practicing and stay curious.